I'm curious. I am curious. Curious.
By nature.
Welcome to Curious by Nature. I'm Jessica Johnson from Newswise. Do you discuss financial planning with your friends? To many, talking about money is taboo. But our guest today researched the social connections of high-income individuals to learn more about the effect of our friendships on our finances. His results suggest that it pays to be friends with wealthy people, and especially to talk with them about money matters. Dr. Cannon, welcome. Please introduce yourself and your work.
I'm Brad Cannon. I'm from Binghamton University, and I'm an assistant professor in finance. I'm curious about how social connections impact household financial behavior.
Tell me more about your work overall.
Yeah, so my work more broadly consists of kind of two types of research. One, I'm interested in sort of the psychology aspect of how people make financial decisions. And so I'm especially interested in how returns affect how people make decisions. Do people think what happened in the past is predictive of what's going to happen in the future? Or are people more contrarian, meaning that if things went well in the past, they think it's going to go bad in the future? So that's sort of one line of my research. But the research that we'll be discussing today is more related to social connections, which is an area that I'm very interested in because a lot of finance, at least the decisions that I make personally, are largely influenced by conversations I've had with friends, with family. And being a finance professor, I have these same people come to me very often. My brother called me last week and was wondering, okay, should I do this? Should I do this? And so I'm interested in studying how these social connections shape our financial decisions and what kind of social connections actually matter for the decisions that we make.
For your recent paper was titled Friends with Benefits, Social Capital and Household Financial Behavior. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so in this paper, we're interested in studying what type of social connections matter. And so a lot of us are influenced by conversations that we have with friends, with families, whether that be where we're going to buy our house, how we're going to, where we're going to do our banking at, what credit cards we get. But one of the things that we thought would be especially influential is understanding whether our social connections impact whether or not we participate in the stock market. And the reason that we're interested in this is because the stock market provides very large returns for those who invest. So it can create large disparities in wealth between those who invest and those who do not invest. And so what we were interested in is understanding whether and what type of social connections matter for the decision of whether to invest in the stock market or not.
Can you tell me about how you structured the study a little bit and what you were looking at?
So this research has largely been limited because we haven't had a lot of information about social connections. This is data that's very hard to get. I could go to each individual and ask, okay, who are you friends with? But there's not really been a structured way to organize this data until Facebook. And so with the advent of Facebook, there's a systematic way to find who's connected with whom. And so there have been researchers in sort of the past 10 years who have used this Facebook data to construct different ways and linkages between friendship networks. And so the data that we use looks at friendship network measures for each zip code in the United States. So we're thinking about zip codes that are connected to other people. So we can look at their Facebook connections and see whether the people that they're connected with have a high income or low income. And so for the regions that are more connected to people that have high income, we would expect that they have sort of these intangible benefits because high-income people tend to invest in the stock market, generally have better financial discipline, and so these behaviors, when they come up in social conversations, can perpetuate more in regions like this.
So you were looking at the Facebook data and who's friends with who, and what else did you draw from that?
Yeah, so the other things that we were looking at, in addition to who you know, um, is how tight your friendship network is. So if I'm friends with you and you're also friends with Anne, and I'm friends with Anne, we have what would be considered a tight friendship network. But if I'm friends with you and you're not friends with Anne, then we have sort of a looser friendship network where not everyone knows each other. And in tight friendship networks, we might think, okay, it's easier to talk about financial conversations because we all know each other, we're all comfortable with each other. And so maybe that influences financial behavior. And then the third thing that we look at is what we refer to as civic engagement. And so what we mean by that is how pro-social a community is. Are people in a zip code, do they tend to volunteer? Do they tend to participate in organizations that promote the good of the community? And we think about in communities like this, where people sort of look out for one another, they might also be more willing to share useful information with each other and sort of just have greater trust in financial institutions. So these are sort of like the three types of social connections that we're looking at and how they influence financial behavior.
So one of the big questions that I have is around kind of the conversations about money within these various groups, because it seems like there's even been a lot of people talking about how taboo talking about money is. And so what do you think about that? I mean, I know that wasn't necessarily the topic of this paper, but what do you think about what people share and how much they share?
For those friends that you're close to, I feel like a lot of your financial decisions are influenced by these conversations with friends, even though it's not something that you discuss with every single day. Maybe you'll go to the gym with somebody, maybe you'll go to dinner with someone, and when you're having sort of these deeper conversations, and you have this trust in somebody, um, it's helpful to be able to ask somebody else, "Hey, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about buying a house. What did you do when you bought a house? Okay, I'm thinking about saving for college for my kids. How do I even start doing this?" And so with the internet, I mean, we can look it up online, but there's this element of trust that we have in other people, um, where we have this close connection with them, and we tend to rely on their information or give it a little bit more weight than we would just by searching something online.
So what would you say would be some questions that people could speak with, maybe that closer friendship network that you were mentioning before?
So in our paper, what we're interested in is whether or not to participate in the stock market. And so I think this is one of the very important questions that a lot of people have, which is related to retirement. Um, how do I get started investing for retirement? And even if I get started, what do I invest in? How do I set up a brokerage account? These are all things that a lot of people have questions about. And there's frankly a lot of barriers to entry, meaning that it's not easy to get started in this. It seems really difficult, but when you talk to someone who's had the experience doing this, you find out, oh, it's really not that bad. And so by talking with friends who have experience with this, it sort of soothes this discomfort. And so that's one dimension that people could talk about. Another one is when it comes to buying a house. What considerations should I take into account? More in the finance area is what is a reasonable interest rate that I should get? How do I guess, bargain for a better interest rate than I could otherwise get? And even when you have a mortgage, a lot of times people don't refinance when it might be optimal to. In other words, when interest rates have gone down so much that it's beneficial to go to the bank and get a lower interest rate that could save a lot of money long term.
It doesn't seem like those questions are very personal. They're, it seems like someone could have those fairly easily. And so, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there still is this idea of money. You don't necessarily have to share personal details about your income and things like that to be able to gain advantages or to be able to gain insight in understanding how to manage your money better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It seems like a lot of the hesitation, in my opinion, is like what you said, sharing details. Oh, I haven't invested anything and I need to retire in 10 years. Like, that's something you don't want to share. But when it comes to broad topics, like you said, okay, how do I get started investing? I think those are much easier questions to get started with.
If they're, people are at an age where they think and they feel guilty about not doing it, then they dig themselves in a little bit more of a deeper hole. And then how are they going to ask about this? Because then it's obvious that they haven't done anything.
Sort of this self-imposed guilt, even though starting at any point in time is better than not starting at all.
So going back to the paper, I read in the press release, you said that one of the study's unexpected finding was that being around wealthier people mattered more than friending ability. Can you explain this?
Yeah, so we thought this was really interesting. So if you think about having wealthy friends, there's sort of two ways that this can happen. One, I could grow up in a wealthy neighborhood, and so all the people that I associate with at school, on my sports teams, in recreation, any sort of recreational activity are just wealthy. So I end up with a lot of wealthy friends. On the other hand, it could be that I grow up in sort of a less wealthy environment, sort of a more disadvantaged environment where I don't have a lot of opportunities to interact with wealthy individuals. The schools that I go to tend to draw from poorer families. The recreational teams that I'm a part of also draw from the same population. But even among those groups, I might tend to gravitate towards those few wealthy individuals in those groups. And so one of the things that we looked into in this study is which of those friends mattered more for financial decisions. And we actually found that it was just being around wealthy people, having the opportunity to interact with them, that mattered a lot more than selectively choosing who you were going to be friends with. So one of the things that we've actually found recently in the paper is that the way that this happens seems to be just largely through awareness. And so if you grow up in a disadvantaged community, the norm might not be to invest in the stock market. The people that you invest in, or the people that you're around, don't have this experience. And so therefore I guess status quo for you, or sort of the path of least resistance, is to not even think about it. And so when you're around people who this is the norm, this is what they do, for you, for someone who's disadvantaged, that it can sort of make you not feel part of the out group, and feel like, okay, like this is something that I can do. I belong in this group of people, like I can invest. Because I think a lot of people view the stock market especially as, oh, that's just a rich person's game. I'm not part of that crowd, where it provides benefits to everyone. And when you're around people who view it as sort of the standard, this is what they do, this is part of their lives, it can remove this sort of discomfort that you might feel otherwise.
You had mentioned before, like being in communities that do more community service as well. I guess those are ways for people to connect with other people that might be giving back and maybe have greater wealth in order to be around them.
Based on our findings, these communities that are more pro-social, that tend to be involved, it does influence stock market participation and the decision to save, but the effect is much smaller than actually having friendships with high SES or high socioeconomic status.
Tell me more about how you see the differences between just those people that you are connected to and those people that you're much closer and you have friendships with?
You can think of friendships in different ways, or you can think of being part of a social group or a community. There's different ways to measure how valuable your friends are. One is thinking about their income. Another is thinking about how much people care for one another. Um, and kind of what we find is that caring for one another does matter. It seems like these communities tend to invest more, and this might be because they talk to each other more, they're more comfortable with each other. But what we find is actually having those friendships seems to matter a lot more, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But one of the things that could happen is these communities that are more involved in each other's lives and that care about each other could lead to these friendships, which we find are the things that actually impact household financial behavior a lot.
So, how should someone assess whether they need to maybe reach out to other people and build their network?
As a society as a whole, we tend to shelter ourselves more than I think is best. And we tend to just stick around sort of our same friend groups, people that are very similar to us. But when we're exposed to new ideas, it helps us think about things in ways that we haven't before. And so whether that's lower income or disadvantaged people interacting with wealthier people, or the reverse, where you can think about, oh, I haven't lived in this way before. How do they cope with everyday life? I think it just opens up our mind to just better ways of thinking.
If you were to give 3 ways for people to be able to connect with wealthier individuals and to become friends with wealthier individuals, what would you recommend people do?
Yeah, so you can think about this from two ways. One for what should individuals do? One could be think of like, what do we think about policy-wise? So there's research out there that shows that these cross-class relationships actually happen at sort of places that you might expect, like libraries, or also at religious gatherings. Also, surprisingly, there's recent research that shows that chain restaurants such as Applebee's and Chili's and places like that are places that there a lot of cross-class relationships happen. But from an individual's perspective, you can think about this as when you get that invitation to go somewhere, and you're like, should I go? Should I not go? Our research shows that maybe you should think a little bit more about going, whether that's for your benefit or for someone else's or for both of your benefits.
What are things that recently have really kind of surprised you about what you've learned?
One of the most surprising things that I've learned from this research is that it's opportunities to interact with people that matter rather than choosing to have wealthy friends. And so going to this example about the tennis club, if I join a tennis team, there could be a lot of wealthier individuals on this tennis team who have experience investing in the stock market, and this might induce me to save better, to have better financial decisions. But just because I'm part of that tennis team, I still might feel excluded and not part of this group. And so it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to make friends with all these people. I might gravitate towards those few people who don't invest in the stock market. And so it was somewhat surprising to me to find that just being part of these groups, or you could think of this as like maybe going to social events that you don't feel comfortable with, exposes you to different ideas, to these people that you may not generally associate with, who have a different lifestyle. And just being exposed to these different ideas seems like it goes a long way in influencing financial behavior.
So, getting out of our comfort zone,
Yes.
just think about new things and maybe change course a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Brad, for taking the time today.
Curious by Nature is a production of Newswise. More than 7,000 journalists get the Newswise wires. Visit newswise.com and find out how to spread your news today.